2018 MXA 450 Shootout started 8 months ago. MXA did their first days of testing at Zaca Station, Sunrise, Kahia Creek, Glen Helen, and the JGR track in North Carolina. We then got the bikes home on our home turf to evaluate each 450's good traits, but also to expose their flaws. A bike's flaws is where we spend countless hours in an effort to fix them. And while it's not in our mission statement, we are trying to break them. Why? We have 8 months to put as many hours on our test bikes as possible. Most shootouts are done in 3 or less days. Ask yourself, how much algebra could you learn in 3 days? We keep our new 450 bikes pretty much stock, but there are exceptions. We don't revalve the forks or shock unless it's trying to kill us. Make changes to any problem area that must be addressed for the good of the bike or the well-being of the test riders. MXA will change the gearing, add stiffer clutch springs, increase or decrease spring rates, raise or lower oil heights, remap the engine without changing the black boxes, and change bars if the majority of test riders agree on a different bend. We know that it is inevitable that whatever bike a magazine chooses as the winner of the shootout, someone is going to be unhappy. First on the list are the racers who maxed out their credit cards to buy the bike that finished last. Next come the dealers who sell the brands that didn't get good reviews. Finally come the manufacturers who lost. You might have thought that the factories would have been #1 on the unhappy hit parade, but that isn't true. They wanted to win, they hoped to win, but every manufacturer has a full-blown test department that knows, in great detail, the flaws of their own machines and the highlights of their competition. They have scales, dynos, computers, and test riders who know good from bad, and thus, we know shootouts are, by their very nature, never going to make everyone happy. There are 6 machines in contention for the 2018 MXA 450 Shootout. Our information is just a suggestion. Potential buyers should look at all of the factors before throwing their plastic money on the counter. There are a lot of qualities that can make the worst bike in the comparison the best bike for you. Here's our 2018 450 Shootout rundown. If you read a shootout where the 2018 KTM 450 SXF didn't win, you just wasted your time reading a seriously flawed evaluation system. Not even in the 5th dimension is there a machine that offers as many pluses and as a few minuses as the KTM 450 SXF. Here are the top 10 highlights. The hydraulic clutch, the most powerful brakes, ultra manageable fast power band. It's the lightest in its class. It is the best all-around handling bike on the track. It shifts the best. The AER air forks are better than every other fork on the market, save for the Kawasaki SSS forks on the YZF450F. The electronic suite on the left-hand side of the handlebar features 2 ECU maps, traction control and launch control at the push of a button, has quick-release fuel lines, rubber-mounted bars, plastic frame guards, direct connect throttle cables, mud-free shift lever, lock-on grips, big foot pegs, in-mold graphics, and a stock hour meter. And last but not least, you don't need to remove the seat to get your KTM air filter. Second place in the MXA Shootout is a tie between the FC 450 and CRF 450. They tie because they are diametrically opposed to each other in power, handling, and suspension. In order to be considered equal, they must be unequal. This requires a set of circumstances that bring an inferior bike up to a higher standard and a superior machine down to a lower benchmark. And that is where we find the 2018 Sierra F450 and the 2018 Husqvarna FC 450. Not for a second do we believe that they are equals, but we do believe that they both serve different masters. Husqvarna FC 450 versus Honda Sierra F450 is an interesting matchup, largely because they get the job done with completely different approaches. Almost everything on the must-have list favors Husqvarna FC 450. The FC 450 has the exact same brakes, suspension, handling, shifting, electronics, and accessories that KTM. Where it differs is its power delivery, clutch actuation, chassis resilience, and a slight weight gain. The 2018 Honda Sierra 450 is a little more than the 2017 Sierra 450 with stiffer springs, a new map, and electric starting. Those three changes are an odd mix. The new Sierra 450 map helped the engine run cleaner throughout its power band. The stiff fork and shock springs help hold the 2018 Sierra F higher in the stroke, while the electric starter eliminated kicking. The FC 450 is 16 pounds lighter than the Sierra 450. Has a much better clutch, brakes, forks, electronics, shifting, airbox design, cooling, frame rigidity, and airflow. If you're wondering how we could possibly consider these two bikes to be a tie for second overall, we are getting there. 2018 Husqvarna has a very broad, easy to use mellow power band. If you're of the opinion that the typical 450cc motocross bike is a romping, stomping beast, the Husqvarna will convince you otherwise. It should be noted that a Husqvarna FC 450 owner can turn his mellow engine into the identical KTM 450 SXF engine by drilling holes in the airbox and replacing the baffle muffler with a free flow KTM muffler or any aftermarket slip-on. The 2018 Honda Sierra 450 power band is more exciting. It hits harder and smoother, with the payoff being a great mid-range pull. Thanks to the new black box map, the Sierra 450 has a better transition from mid to low. Last year's herky-jerky low to mid power hasn't been eliminated, but when the Sierra 450 comes on in the mid-range, it is at its best. Compared to the FC 450 power band, the Sierra F450's power band is fun to ride. Both bikes are more than fast, with only the tiniest difference in peak horsepower. But the Husky is a smooth lap time engine, while the Honda is a gun and run power band. As far as handling, the Husky's chromoly chassis is forgiving, super accurate, and absorbent. Even when compared to the identical frame geometry of the KTM 450 SXF, the Husky is softer feeling. The Honda's Delta Box aluminum frame is, as it always has been, on the stiff side of the equation when it comes to resilience. The rigidity works the rider more in the rough, but produces a cut and thrust style of handling. Its best trait is that turn-in, where it can knife into any inside line. This quickness, combined with its explosive power, makes it a scalpel in the hands of a rider who is a surgeon at juggling oversteer in the exit. Depending on what you want out of your bike, you can get it with either the 2018 Honda Sierra 450 or the Husqvarna FC 450. You just can't get everything in the same bike, unless you buy KTM 450 SXF.
Let's just get together. Let's just get together. Oh, tonight.
Every MX8 test rider went back and forth between the 2018 Yamaha YZF 450 and the 2018 Kawasaki KX450F for fourth spot in the shootout. It wasn't exactly a moral dilemma, but there were elements of the decision that tested our resolve in choosing the Yamaha over the Kawasaki. There is no reason to gloss it over. Half of the MX8 test riders hated the bike, while the other half loved it. Every MX8 test rider who cringed at the memory of the last 4 years of the jumbo-sized, poor turning, two-stage power band YZ450S found some aspects of what they disliked in the 2018 model. However, riders who got along with the 2014 through 2017 YZ450F, while recognizing the flaws, thought that the 2018 YZ450F was a massive improvement. Overall, we think the Yamaha's engineers did a great job of addressing a lot of the YZ450F's previous ills. It does have a better power band, it is slimmer and narrower, the airbox is easier to access, it performs better than any previous Yamaha turn-in. It is equipped with an electric starter and mapping that can be tuned by a smartphone app. You can't forget about the awesome Kawasaki SS oil spring forks. We love pressing a button to fire up the engine, but instead of losing 4 pounds with their new bike, Yamaha added 1 pound to a bike that was already too heavy. Thus, Yamaha invested in a new engine, new chassis, new bodywork, and new airbox, only to end up at 239 pounds. There's no doubt that Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki need to reset their priorities. They aren't competing against each other to build the heaviest bikes, also. They should be competing against KTM to build the lightest. The 2018 YZF is fourth in the 2018 MXA Shootout because it is better, while being worse at the same time. We're sure that Yamaha engineers didn't intend that. Kawasaki dropped 2 spots in the MXA's 450 ranking from the 2017 shootout to 2018 shootout. They knew what was going to happen, but they had no choice. The Kawasaki pencil pushers didn't want to spend the money on the 2018 KX450F because there would be an all-new 2019 KX450F. The sad thing, especially for the MXA wrecking crew, is that we like the current KX450F. We don't like it because it's the lightest, fastest, or best handling bike on the track. It isn't. Instead, it is a good all-around bike with a very few flaws and lots of good traits. The problem for Kawasaki isn't that their bike is good, it's that it is boring. It has no pizzazz, no buzz. Kawasaki is going to have trouble finding buyers for a bike that is steady, predictable, and has good personality. That just sounds like a bad blind date. If we liked it so much, then why are we placing it 5th in the shootout? 4 reasons. It's not fast. It doesn't make much in the way of horsepower. It doesn't have any significant top-end power. On the good side of the ledger, the 2018 Kawasaki KX450F Powerband is supremely usable, very linear, mellow to the max, and never scary. It gives up 2.5 horsepower to the Honda, KTM, and Husqvarna, and when you consider that the KX450F isn't good above 8,800 RPM, there is no incentive to rev it. Still, the MXA test riders like the KX450F engine. It is a solid mid-range engine that puts all it has into the ground. In fact, the KX450F makes more horsepower in the mid-range than any other 2018 bike. Just don't rev it past 9 grand. 2. It has Showa tack air forks. 3. Its clutch is pitiful. 4. The chain guide will disintegrate in no time. We will say that is a major revision over the bike that Suzuki has been band-aiding for years. The paradox is that Suzuki has had more time to think about what they would do when they finally did it than any motocross manufacturer in history, and what they did wasn't worth the wait. We think that given another year of R&D, Suzuki could have done a much better job. Most of the needed fixes could easily be handled on the assembly line and with some real-world testing. Before we get to the aspects of the 2018 Suzuki RMZ 450 that slid it into the 6th place slot, here are some things that it does right. First, every MXA test rider loved the Powerband. Picked up cleanly off the bottom and got its job done in the RPM range where the typical rider likes his power. It has almost perfect power placement for the average rider. It's not too fast, it's not too slow. It's just right for a rider looking for a manageable, no drama, 450cc motocross Powerband. There is better over rev on top than in 2017. By no means is this a top-end Powerband. With all the changes Suzuki made to the 2018 engine, we expected competitive horsepower numbers. Instead, we got 1 horsepower more at peak with a cumulative of 55.16 horsepower. That is the least horsepower of any 2018 bike, as much as 3 horses less. Second, given that Suzuki spec'd the worst setup forks in the world in 2016 and 2017, anything would be an improvement. The RMZ 450 and 2018 CRF 450 share the same basic Showa coil spring fork. The result on both the CRF 450 and RMZ 450 is a fork that is very harsh in the small stuff and yet bottoms in the big hits. However, on the Suzuki, this is a quantum leap better than what we had. Third, always considered to be the best turning bike in the class, although not the best all-around handler. Suzuki can still claim to be the sharpest turning bike, with the condition that its unbalanced chassis will make it turn too sharp. It understeers in and goes wacky and turn out. The rear of the bike is too high, which steepens the head angle, especially under braking. Fourth, Suzuki spec'd the innovative new Showa BFRC rear shock on the RMZ 450. This is a great shock where the rear wheel is hooked up, but a teeter-totter when the rear wheel breaks traction, bounces, or rebounds. Most MXA test riders felt that the rear end of the RMZ 450 made big swings in its travel and weren't warranted by the track conditions. Fifth, Riders always say that they don't care how much their bike weighs because it feels light in motion. No 2018 Suzuki RMZ 450 owner will ever say that, because the 2018 RMZ 450 feels heavy every time you lean it over in the corner, try to get it stopped, or make quick side-to-side corrections and switchbacks. At 241 pounds, Suzuki should be selling the RMZ 450 by the pound.
What we need, we're gonna find tonight. We don't need a reason. We're talking in advance. Don't need an invitation. Just show up when you can. Let's get together. Let's just get together. Let's get together tonight. Let's get together. Let's get together. Let's get together tonight. Everyone got stars in their eyes. Come here, baby, gonna make you mine. Someday all the world will see. It's all about
We made a first ride video for the 6 bikes in this shootout. To check the video out, click the video thumbnail now, or check out motocrossactionmag.com for all the 2018 products and bike tests.